We are first introduced to Tony Stark as the owner and CEO of Stark Industries, a multinational industrial company and the largest tech conglomerate in the world, which he inherited from his father Howard Stark after his assassination many years earlier. Due to his enormous wealth and notorious ego, Stark leads the carefree life of a billionaire genius playboy philanthropist, in his own words, and as a result ends up neglecting the best interests of his company. During a trip to Afghanistan to spruik and sell his latest advanced ammunitions to the US military, Stark's convoy is ambushed by terrorist organisation the Ten Rings, who kidnap him and force him to build one of his new missiles in exchange for freedom. Pretending to do so, Stark secretly begins building a suit of armour powered by a mini arc reactor, which also serves to keep shrapnel from his heart. Stark uses the suit to escape his bondage, and while fighting off his captors, discovers they have been using his own weapons against him and his allies. Destroying the cache of weapons, Stark manages to escape, where he is rescued by his friend and military liaison, Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes. Having seen the damage his weapons and neglect of the company has done, Stark is racked by guilt and immediately announces the shuttering of the weapons manufacturing division of Stark Industries, effective immediately, at a press conference on his arrival home. Stark begins work on building a new, more powerful arc reactor and spends months building more advanced suits of armor, which he plans to use to safeguard the world from the hands of evil. Stark's first self-appointed mission sees him tracking down more stolen Stark Tech weapons and destroying them. In doing so, he finds himself the target of the US military and has to reveal himself to Lieutenant Rhodes. Thanks to the help of his personal assistant and love interest Pepper Potts, Stark discovers that his business partner Obadiah Stane is the one secretly selling weapons to terrorists. Potts also uncovers Stane's plot to overthrow Stark and gain control of Stark Industries. Getting possession of Stark's original armor from Afghanistan, Stane has his scientists reverse engineer it and builds his own armor in an attempt to fight and kill Stark. The two engage in a battle which results in Stane's death. Gaining traction in the media, Stark's alter ego is dubbed Iron Man and is applauded as a hero by the public. Stark's exploits also gain the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D., a counter-terrorist organisation, and Stark is approached by Agent Phil Coulson with a cover story. Always one to love the spotlight, Stark won't go through with the cover story and publicly outs himself as Iron Man. Returning home, Stark is approached by the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, who wants to talk about the Avenger Initiative. 6 months later, having discovered that the palladium core inside his arc reactor is slowly poisoning him, Stark begins a destructive streak that sees him once again embracing the playboy life, relishing his newfound media attention, and carelessly basking in the public adoration and fame of the Iron Man. Stark keeps his impending death a secret and, scared of his fate, appoints Pepper Potts CEO of Stark Industries and takes on Natalie Rushman as his new assistant. Having built a number of new Iron Man suits over the course of the last few months, the US government fears that the armor technology is a threat in the hands of Stark, which has led to an alarming series of fatal copycat attempts to recreate it. Stark is summoned to a Senate Armed Forces inquest, where it is demanded that he hand his tech over to the government. Stark refuses, proving that no one has gotten anywhere near recreating his tech, citing the recent failed efforts of rival Justin Hammer. As his recklessness continues and Stark takes part in a NASCAR race, he is approached on the track by a new threat, Ivan Vanko, the son of a Soviet scientist who assisted Howard Stark in the invention of the arc reactor. Vanko has created a powerful yet primitive armoured suit powered by an arc reactor and begins absolute carnage on the track, hoping for revenge against the Stark family for thwarting his father's success. Stark fights off Vanko using his Mark V suit and defeats him. Thrown in jail, Vanko is broken out and recruited by Hammer in an effort to refine his armoured suits as a means of seeking revenge on Stark, who he believes has disgraced and tarnished his name. His life rapidly falling apart, Stark throws himself an ostentatious birthday party, which he believes will be his last. After he gets highly intoxicated and uses the Iron Man armour for party tricks, Rhodes, donning the Mark II armour, calls off the party. Becoming petulant and aggressive, Stark begins to brawl with Rhodes. This not only causes mass damage to Stark's mansion, but gains further media attention and government scrutiny. The following morning, Stark is approached by Fury and Rushman, who he finds out is actually a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent by the name of Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, who's been forced to shadow Stark by S.H.I.E.L.D. Fury tells Stark to clean up his act, inferring that he needs his help for great things. He leaves Stark with a box of his father's old research, which he claims will help him find a new element that will act as a palladium substitute for his arc reactor. Using his father's findings, Stark synthesizes a new element with the assistance of his computer AI Jarvis that not only works as a palladium substitute, but cures his palladium poisoning. Having flown off with the Mark II armor, Rhodey hands it over to Hammer Industries to develop into a highly weaponized version. Rhodey helps Hammer display this new armor at a Stark Expo presentation alongside a collection of drones built with the help of Vanko. During the presentation, the drones become active, controlled by Vanko, and begin a course for destruction. With the aid of Romanov and Hogan, who head to Hammer Industries to stop the madness, both Stark and Rhodey, under the new mantle of War Machine, suit up and fight off the drones and Vanko, who has developed his own high-tech armor. They successfully defeat Vanko, but then learn that his armor and drones have been set to self-destruct, and in a last-ditch effort, Stark races to save Potts from being killed. As he does, they kiss and soon begin a relationship. Stark is then debriefed by Fury, who explains his plans for the Avengers Initiative, an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people to aid in the greater fight for humanity. Being deemed too reckless and unstable to join the team, Stark is instead appointed a consultant. One of Stark's first tasks for Fury is to approach US Army General Thaddeus Ross in an attempt to recruit an out-of-control Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, onto the Avengers team. Soon after, an impending doom requires Fury to put his Avengers Initiative into action, after Loki, an Asgardian prince, comes down to Earth to steal the Tesseract, a cube-shaped containment vessel for an Infinity Stone, and announces his plan to use its immense power to take over the Earth. To aid him in his plight, Loki uses his scepter to put S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, under a mind control. At his newly built Stark Tower, Stark is approached by Agent Coulson, who expresses his desire to recruit him into the Avengers team, noting that the formation of the team is no longer about personality profiles, but about those who are best suited to saving the Earth. Fury recruits Steve Rogers, aka Super Soldier Captain America, to the team, while Romanov recruits Banner after Stark's failed attempt. Loki causes more mayhem in New York, and Stark, Rogers, and Romanov work together to confront and subdue him. With him aboard a S.H.I.E.L.D. escort, Thor, Loki's brother, lands amidst a storm of thunder and attempts to take Loki back to Asgard. Thor is confronted by Rogers and Stark, and after a lengthy battle, agrees to allow Loki to be taken into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, and 2 joins the team. Aboard a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, Thor informs the newly formed team of Loki's plan to use the Tesseract to open a wormhole and lead an alien invasion on Earth. The team begin to bicker over how best to handle the situation, and things get personal when Rogers confronts Stark over his arrogance and selfishness, sparking a rivalry between the two. Barton and Selvig launch an attack on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, which results in Loki escaping, killing Coulson in the process. Stark and Rogers work together to restore the ship's engines, and Romanov breaks Barton free of his mind control. Fury uses the death of Coulson to unite the Avengers, who finally learn to work together and suit up to fight off Loki, who soon appears in New York, where he and Stark engage in a battle of wits. Stark uses his Mark VII armor to try and incapacitate Loki, but Loki breaks free and manages to open a wormhole through which an army of Chitauri aliens swarm and begin their takeover of Earth. The Avengers finally join forces to work together and fight off the Chitauri and Loki. This leads to an all-out battle and a mass destruction of New York. Unimpressed with the efforts of the Avengers and growing increasingly impatient, the World Security Council launches a nuclear missile towards Manhattan. Stark, in his Iron Man suit, intercepts the missile and flies it through the wormhole into space, destroying the alien fleet and ending the invasion. Stark's suit runs out of power and he begins plummeting back to Earth. Romanov and Selvig use Loki's scepter to close the portal, and Stark manages to slip through before it closes off, being caught by the Hulk before he smashes to Earth. The Avengers take Loki into custody, and Thor takes him to Asgard to face prosecution. Stark finds even more fame as a member of the Avengers, who are applauded by the public and hailed as heroes. Paranoid by the thought of another impending invasion, Stark spends every waking moment building scores of armor powered by AI and able to be controlled remotely. He christens his army of suits the Iron Legion. Despite his ever-growing fame, Stark's experience in New York, specifically his near-death experience, lead him to experience signs of post-traumatic stress, including a number of very public panic attacks. Stark becomes withdrawn and unstable and begins to push Potts farther and farther away from him. While battling his own inner demons, happens, Stark comes up against another global threat, masterminded by Aldrich Killian, the founder and CEO of AIM, who Stark had mistreated decades earlier. Killian uses a British actor named Trevor to pose as Ten Rings terrorist leader the Mandarin, and sets up a series of terrorist attacks to lure Stark so he can exact a personal revenge. Believing the Mandarin to be real, Stark issues a public threat to him following an attack on the Chinese theatre in LA, to which Killian retaliates with an attack on Stark's mansion, almost resulting in the death of both Stark and Potts. After his suit malfunctions, Stark winds up stranded in rural town Rose Hill, Tennessee, and Potts is kidnapped by Killian. With the world believing Stark is dead, he takes it to his advantage and begins researching the attacks. He uncovers a thread of clues that lead him towards Killian and his use of the Extremis program, and uncovers the truth behind the Mandarin. Now using the War Machine suit in the US military, Rhodey takes on the new moniker of Iron Patriot and is lured into battle by Killian's falsified intelligence. After Killian kidnaps the US president, Rhodey is drawn into battle alongside Stark to save him, while Stark aims to save Potts. The two infiltrate Killian's hideout, and Stark remotely summons his Iron Legion. Stark and his Legion battle Killian above an enormous rig, which sees Potts falling to an apparent death. Potts, infected by Killian's Extremis serum, survives the fall and uses her obtained abilities to kill Killian. These events lead Stark to reconsider his life and his profession. He makes a vow to Potts to turn his back on crime fighting and live a normal life together. He undergoes surgery to remove the shrapnel from his heart, throws his arc reactor over a cliff, and orders Jarvis to destroy every one of his Iron Man suits. Stark's attempt at a normal life is interrupted when 2 years later, Fury calls upon his intelligence to help wipe out Hydra cells after the terrorist organization re-emerges as infiltrators amongst S.H.I.E.L.D., collapsing the organization in the process. The Avengers are called back into action to retrieve Loki's scepter from a Hydra base, which is being used to power advanced weaponry. Stark is sent to the base to retrieve the scepter, and while he is there, is put under the influence of Wanda Maximoff, a gifted individual with Hex-like powers that are the result of exposure to the scepter in a series of Hydra experiments. Under her spell, Stark has visions that harken back to the Battle of New York and send him into another fit of paranoia. As a result, Stark and Banner begin work on a new peacekeeping program called Ultron that would allow a newly reformed Iron Legion to protect humanity using advanced AI technology. Inadvertently, Stark creates an incredibly intelligent and self-aware AI lifeform which becomes hell-bent on destroying humanity. Ultron takes control of Stark's Iron Legion and attacks the Avengers, sparking a fierce battle at Avengers Tower. A Legion drone steals the scepter and flees to a Hydra base where Ultron uses it to create more drones and his own metal body. He recruits Wanda Maximoff and her brother Pietro to fight against the Avengers. Furious with Stark's actions, which he tries to justify, the other Avengers rally against him to decry his reckless practices and secrecy, which have once again brought an imminent terror to the Earth. Ultron lures the Avengers to South Africa. The Avengers fight Ultron and the Maximoff twins, while Wanda puts the Avengers under a series of spells. Banner in Hulk form is hypnotized by Wanda and rages out of control, stampeding through Johannesburg. Iron Man calls in his Veronica protocol, which sends a Hulkbuster armor to Earth, which he uses to defuse the Hulk. Mass destruction ensues. The Avengers take refuge at Clint Barton's homestead, where Fury arrives to encourage the team to take on Ultron together and stop his evil plan. First, the Avengers stop a convoy carrying Ultron's new synthetic body and infuse it with Stark's Jarvis AI interface, as well as the power of the Infinity Stone found in the scepter. Doing so, they create a brand new peaceful life form, the Vision. They then travel to the country of Sokovia, where Ultron is using Chitauri anti-gravity tech to launch the capital into the sky and crash it into the ground to cause a mass extinction event. An all-out battle ensues across the airborne capital, which results in mass loss of life and destruction. Working together, the team defeat Ultron with the help of new recruit Scarlet Witch, who turns on Ultron after she discovers he has betrayed her and the Vision. Afterwards, the Avengers move into a new facility in upstate New York, where Rogers and Romanov usher in a brand new roster. Stark retires from the team, hoping once again to retreat into the simple life with Potts. A year later, Stark is alone after his relapse back into the role of Iron Man has led Potts to leave him, finding him too selfish and unstable. After a lecture at MIT, Stark is approached by a woman who specifically blames him for the death or murder of her son in Sokovia, once again forcing him to face the guilt over his past actions. After the high casualty incidents on Sokovia, Johannesburg, New York, and a series of others, public opinion of the team has become incredibly divided, and the United Nations imposes a set of sanctions sanctions on the entire team, forcing their hand into signing a series of accords deprivatizing the team and allowing government regulation. Those who don't sign will effectively resign from the team and face possible prosecution. Stark supports the accords, wishing for the team to take more accountability for their actions as he did following his kidnapping, while Rogers disagrees, finding the sanctions to be a breach of privacy, fearing a compromise of the team. The Avengers split into two factions, Team Stark and Team Rogers. This divide leads to a series of arguments between team members, most notably a heated discussion between Stark and Rogers, which almost sees Rogers buckle under pressure. In Vienna, where the signing of the Accords is set to take place, a terrorist bomb explodes, killing T'Chaka, the King of Wakanda. Bucky Barnes, Rogers' childhood buddy, reprogrammed and brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. as a Winter Soldier after his supposed death in World War II, is framed for the murder. After discovering the whereabouts of Barnes, in an attempt to clear his name, Rogers leads his faction of the Avengers on a rescue mission behind the back of US Secretary Ross. Arrested for obstructing justice, Rogers and company essentially become enemies of the state as they escape custody and attempt to flee to an abandoned Hydra facility in Siberia, where they fear 5 more Winter Soldiers will be released on the world. Rogers brings on a new recruit, Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man. Stark and his faction are given 36 hours to bring Rogers and company back into custody before they face further prosecution, and he begins to assemble his own team. Feeling undermanned, he travels to New York, where he's been keeping tabs on Peter Parker, an enhanced teen who's become an internet sensation, fighting crime as the Spider-Man. Irresponsibly, Stark recruits him to his team. Before Rogers and his team can escape, Stark and his team confront them. A fierce argument ensues, which breaks out into an all-out civil war between the Avengers heroes. Rogers' team distracts Team Stark, allowing for Rogers and Barnes to escape in a Quinjet. Stark and Rhodes attempt to stop the Quinjet, but the Vision accidentally shoots Rhodes down when aiming for the pursuing Falcon, and paralyzes him from the waist down. With members of Rogers' Avengers in prison, Stark soon learns that Bucky was in fact framed, and that he and Rogers have been set up by Sokovian Zemo, who wants revenge on the Avengers for the destruction of his country. Stark follows Rogers and Barnes to Siberia, where he once again confronts and reconciles with them. Exploring the facility, Zemo shows up, and further creating a rift between the Avengers, shows Stark security footage showing Barnes to be the assassin of his parents many years ago. Stark becomes enraged, though Rogers tries to defuse the situation by saying Barnes was under mind control. Stark questions Rogers and discovers that he knew that Barnes was behind his parents' murder, but kept it a secret. Stark lashes out at Barnes, but as Rogers steps in to defend his friend, the three end up in an all-out brawl, which results in Bucky losing an arm and Stark's suit being disabled. After a verbal lashing from Stark, Rogers realizes he is no longer worthy of the Captain America name and drops his shield, leaving with Barnes. Stark returns to the Avengers facility, where he builds an exoskeletal frame for Rhodes. A parcel arrives in the mail from Rogers, who apologizes for everything, but notes he still cannot sign the Accords. He tells Stark that he knows one day the team will be able to assemble once more, and leaves him with a phone that will act as a direct line to him if his help is ever needed. Sometime after, Stark continues to show an interest in Parker and becomes somewhat of an unofficial mentor. He, however, tells Parker to continue with his studies as he's not yet ready to become a full-time Avenger, insisting he should instead focus on local crime. After Parker gets involved in a fight with goons selling Chitauri weaponry stolen from Ground Zero of the Battle of New York, Stark, who is monitoring the Spider-Man suit, rescues him and then scolds him for going against his advice. Soon after, Parker goes against his advice again, finding himself once again embroiled in a battle against black market dealers, resulting in the destruction of a New York ferry and the near death of dozens of people. In doing so, Parker accidentally thwarts an FBI attempt to detain Adrian Toomes, the leader of the black market. Stark, who has been assisting the FBI, once again scolds Parker and confiscates his suit. Finding out that Toomes is attempting to hijack a Stark cargo plane transporting weaponry out of the Avengers Tower, which has now been sold to a new owner, Parker realizes he can't abandon his duties and ambushes Toomes. After a lengthy battle, he defeats Toomes and leaves him for the police. Stark admires Parker's bravery and offers him a full-time placement in the Avengers, along with a brand new Iron Spider suit. Parker declines, wanting to instead remain a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It's revealed that Stark and Potts have now gotten back together as his life has become more stable. A year later, Stark and Potts are engaged to be married, and Stark begins fretting over his new life as a husband and perhaps one day a father. On a walk through Central Park, Stark is approached by Bruce Banner and Stephen Strange, a Sorcerer Supreme looking over the New York City Sanctum. The two insist Stark come to the Sanctum as they need his help urgently to aid in an incoming attack. At the Sanctum, Banner, Strange, and his partner Wong explain that an alien tyrant named Thanos plans to eradicate half of humanity using the Infinity Stones, explaining that he was the one behind the invasion of New York. Stark, confronted by his worst fear, is convinced to call in the assistance of Rogers via the phone left to him, but before he can, an alien spacecraft lands, causing panic in the New York streets. The four confront the invaders and end up battling in the streets. The battle concludes with the abduction of Doctor Strange, who possesses one of the Infinity Stones. Stark trails the invader and Strange and attempts to enter the ship. There he is met by Parker, who has seen the ship from a school bus and decided to investigate. Stark gives Parker the Iron Spider suit, proclaiming him an official Avenger, and the two stow away in the ship. On the ship, the two rescue Strange by blowing a hole in the hull and sucking his captor out into space. Stark suggests they remain on course to Titan, where they can surprise and ambush Thanos. He calls Potts to tell her that he's leaving and say a possible final goodbye, and despite her pleas against it, he continues with his mission. After landing on Titan, Stark, Strange, and Parker come into contact with the Guardians of the Galaxy, a team of intergalactic heroes also planning to stop Thanos. After a brief moment of hostility, the team decide to work together. When Thanos arrives on Titan, a confrontation leads to a massive battle, which sees Thanos using the Infinity Stones to cause mass carnage. Stark and company attempt to remove the Infinity Gauntlet, which houses the stones, from Thanos, but upon finding out that Thanos has killed his love, Quill lashes out and prevents the removal of the gauntlet at the last moment. Another battle ensues, which sees Thanos overpowering Doctor Strange, and when Stark attacks in retaliation, he is stabbed in the stomach and seriously wounded. Strange agrees to hand the Infinity Stone to Thanos in return for Stark's life being spared. Thanos takes the stone and immediately departs for Wakanda. On Wakanda, Thanos engages in a battle with the other Avengers, but ends up completing his plight to rid the world of half its population with a snap of the finger. People around the world begin disappearing into mists of dust, including most of those on Titan with Stark. As Stark watches Strange, Parker, and all of the Guardians except Nebula fade away, he realizes Thanos' plight is complete, and finds himself left all alone on an alien planet with no possible way of escape. His PTSD sets in, and he's forced to face his greatest fears once again. If this is your first time viewing one of my videos, you like what you've seen, you'd like to see more like this in the future, then please don't forget to hit that big old subscribe button up on your screen right now, and also hit that like button down below if you're feeling extra generous. Also, don't forget to check out my many social media accounts, and please consider supporting me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.